New details on the meeting President Obama held yesterday with a group of what we're being told was Muslim American leaders. Just over a dozen people joined the president for about an hour, after which the White House refused to identify which leaders were in that meeting. They also sat down with Valerie Jarrett and others in the White House staff. Fox News Chief White House Correspondent Ed Henry today pushed back.
Follow up on the two questions you got about the meeting with Muslim leaders yesterday. We were specifically told that you would not release it like yesterday because they were private citizens who came in. Now, as you yourself noted, the president met with private citizens who were dreamers. They're pretty young, and you brought in TV cameras. We didn't get all their names, but they're private citizens as well. And I'm sort of curious, is that you suggested at the beginning that you might get the names. So
yeah, I'll see if I can do that for you. I mean, one thing we do know is that the names will be included in the waves records that are released. Right. They're on that regular process.
Down the road. But
yeah. So they will at least some point be released. Let me see if I can get them released sooner. I know that at least a couple of the individuals who participated in that meeting have spoken publicly about their participation in the meeting. So, at least.
But doesn't that make it? Just put the list out there, right?
Well, that's what I told you.
Okay. Well, last night the White House told us it wouldn't put it out. I just want to put that on the record.
Okay.
Joining me now, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, a Muslim and the founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. He's the author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam. Zuhdi, good to see you again tonight. And so you say you're furious about this meeting. Why?
Well, it's basically, Megan, it's the infantilization and racialization of our faith community. And you know, my family's from Syria, and this reminds me of sort of the royal meeting with the Muslim council that comes out, and we hear from the princes that met with the king what actually happened inside the meeting, and the rest of us Muslims who are trying to reform and bring the realities of the truth to it are not allowed to talk about it, and we're told that we can't even reform. And look in Saudi Arabia, the reformers are being whipped, but doesn't happen in America, but at least we're made irrelevant. And instead of hearing about them talking about jihad, the hundreds of thousands being killed by radical Islam, no, we hear that their main ask, Megan, was, they want a judge, a Muslim judge on a federal court. I mean, seriously, God help us. This is absurd.
Who was in the meeting? Because still we haven't had an official disclosure, but some have come out and said, I was there and I was there.
You know, basically, these are Muslims that don't care that much about Islamism. You have a comedian, Dean Obeidullah. You have a basketball player that had the courage to wear a hijab. You had Mohammed Majid, the former, one of the former leaders in ISNA. You had the current leader with ISNA. So these are groups that, and also the Muslim Public Affairs Council. All I can tell you that the filter seems to be groups that are either apologists for Islamism or those that really want to look at our community as victims, and those that are racializing Islam as a race rather than as an ideology that needs reform.
So a couple who were there came out and said, well, what we really wanted to talk about was the bigotry against Muslims. They think that there's anti-Muslim bigotry on the rise. And one of the folks who apparently they wanted to discuss this with was the man you just mentioned, a comedian named Dean Obeidullah. Is that how you pronounce it? Obeidullah.
Yes, Obeidullah.
This is the guy. So he's going to talk about bigotry against Muslims. This is the man who not long ago on MSNBC decided to mock Mitt Romney's family because he has a black grandson. Watch.
This is the Romney family. Any captions for this one?
I think this picture is great. It really sums up the diversity of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
For every RNC. One they find one black person.
So he later came out and apologized after that became a big deal. But this is who was talking to the White House about how we're going to solve bigotry.
Well, this gentleman, as you can see on my Twitter feed earlier, I tried to address, he sends me his article about his meeting and basically responds with a flippant response as if everything is about jokes. And, I'm sorry, we are a patient that has a cancer. And the Muslim community right now is being told by the President of the United States that our leaders are people that don't care about this cancer, that not only is radicalizing Muslims in America and Canada and Paris and elsewhere, but is destroying our communities that have an opportunity for reform in Egypt and Syria and elsewhere. Meanwhile, we're wasting the taxpayers' money and time in the White House with absurd meetings of victimization. Sure,
but listen, the White House says, I want to say two things. Number one, the White House has met with Jewish leaders in the past without disclosing the identities. Christian leaders as well in the past without disclosing the identities. When pressed, however, it's unusual when pressed to not then release. In any event, the White House is saying what we met and discussed with these leaders was How do you keep an eye out for radicalization within your communities? How can we nip it in the bud? How do you see it? All of which would be beneficial, no?
Well, Megan, the country, the world is waiting on the edge of their chair to hear what Muslims are going to do about this problem. And if they really want to fix Islamophobia, this meeting, remember, Megan, the context is it came out of a January where we had one horrific terror video after an attack in Paris, on and on. Now we're almost a month to the attack tomorrow, and now we have a meeting about how Muslims are victims and basically Christianity is the problem at the prayer breakfast. I mean, the priorities are absurd. And secondly, if you really want to treat the bigotry that may exist out there, if for Americans to see us leading a jihad against jihad is the treatment of that. It is not to deny it and push it aside. You can't defeat the ideology unless you first identify it and then empower the community that needs to fix it, and not take people that are part of some royal council that want to deny it and maintain control of our community.
Zuhdi Jasser, good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Megan. Appreciate it.
We also saw